They say you don't truly know a species until you've tried to kill them. The invasion of Earth began at 0600 hours on a Tuesday, and by noon, Commander Vrakthies of the Soltari Dominion was already questioning his tactical briefings. His officers had promised him an elementary campaign. The intelligence reports painted humanity as a species of middling durability, average reflexes, and laughable pain tolerance. Their worlds fell easily to psychological warfare. Their bodies lacked natural armor. Their bones snapped under modest pressure. The Soltari had conquered 43 systems in the last decade alone, each resistance crumbling within weeks. Earth would be no different. Vrakthies stood in the command center of his flagship, watching the holographic displays flicker with casualty reports. The numbers climbed higher than they should have. Far higher. Status on Ground Battalion 7. He kept his voice level professional. His communications officer, a young soldier named Hectorus, manipulated the display with trembling claws. Sir, they've stopped responding. Last transmission indicated they were engaging a Terran squad near Sector 12. How many Terrans? 8, sir, against our battalion of 200. Vrakthies' mandibles clicked involuntarily. 8. He pulled up the tactical feed, watching the thermal signatures. Red dots marked his soldiers, scattered and retreating. Blue dots marked the humans, still advancing, still moving. Impossible. He leaned closer to the screen. Those signatures should be dead. Our scans show catastrophic injuries. Hector said nothing. What could he say? The data spoke for itself. Private Jorek of the Soltari Advance Guard had believed every word of his training until the moment he shot his first human. The engagement happened in what remained of Denver, among skeletal buildings and fractured highways. Jorek's squad moved through the ruins with practiced efficiency, their armor humming with protective fields, their rifles charged and ready. They'd expected scattered resistance, maybe a few desperate shots before the Terrans broke and ran. Instead, they found Corporal Danny Reeves. Jorek spotted him first, a lean man in torn fatigues, crouched behind an overturned vehicle. Jorek raised his rifle, the targeting reticle painting Reeves's center mass. He squeezed the trigger. The plasma bolt struck true, burning through Reeves's tactical vest and into his chest. The impact threw the human backward, smoke rising from the wound. Jorek lowered his weapon. Target neutralized. Then Reeves sat up. Blood soaked through his shirt, spreading dark and wet. His face had gone pale, lips pressed into a thin line. But his hands moved, patting his sides, checking his gear. He found a roll of medical tape in his vest pocket. With shaking fingers, he tore off strips and pressed them across the burn, hissing through clenched teeth. "What is he doing?" Jorek's squadmate whispered. Reeves grabbed his rifle, rose to one knee, aimed. The shot took Jorek's squadmate in the throat. The Soltari fell, gurgling, and Reeves was already moving, rolling behind cover as more plasma bolts scorched the ground where he'd been. Jorek pressed himself flat, his heart hammering. His training had never covered this. Nothing in the tactical manuals explained how to fight someone who simply refused to acknowledge their own wounds. "Fall back," his squad leader shouted, and they retreated, leaving 2 dead behind. Jorek looked back once. Reeves was still there, still upright, rifle raised, waiting. The pattern repeated across every front. Vrakthies received reports from urban centers, rural outposts, coastal installations. Every commander told the same story. The Terrans wouldn't stop. They fought with broken limbs. They dragged themselves forward on shattered legs. They used their own bodies as shields for their squadmates, taking fatal hits and still managing to return fire before they finally went down. In Chicago, a Terran named Private Jessica Wung held a choke point for 6 hours with a punctured lung and 3 broken ribs. She killed 37 Soltari soldiers before blood loss finally claimed her. Her last transmission was a status report, delivered in a calm, professional tone, as if she wasn't dying. In Moscow, a squad of humans rigged an entire building to explode. When the Soltari breached the doors, the humans detonated the charges, knowing full well they were still inside. The blast killed 200 Soltari. The humans never tried to escape. In Tokyo, a Terran medic named Staff Sergeant Thomas Briggs was hit by a plasma grenade that tore away his left arm at the elbow. He used his belt as a tourniquet, picked up his rifle with his remaining hand, and continued treating wounded soldiers for another 3 hours. When asked why he didn't evacuate, he said, "Because they need me here." Vrakthies read each report with mounting dread. This wasn't warfare. This was something primal, something his species had never encountered. "They're animals," one of his officers muttered. "No." Vrakthi's closed the data pad. "Animals know when to flee. These creatures are something else entirely." The ambush in Kansas City broke the Soltari advance. Captain Jorek, promoted after surviving the Denver engagement, led a reinforced company into the ruins. Intelligence suggested the area was lightly defended, an easy sweep to secure supply lines. They found Captain Lauren Pierce instead. Pierce commanded a platoon of 23 humans, all that remained of a battalion that had been fighting for 6 straight days. They were exhausted, wounded, running low on ammunition. By every military standard, they should have surrendered. Pierce had other ideas. She positioned her soldiers in the rubble of a collapsed shopping center, using the twisted metal and concrete as natural fortifications. When the Soltari entered the kill zone, the Terrans opened fire from 3 directions at once. Jorek's company, 200 strong, found themselves pinned by a force they outnumbered 9 to 1. "Suppress that position," Jorek screamed, pointing to a Terran machine gunner who was raking their lines with sustained fire. His soldiers poured plasma into the position. The building shook. Walls collapsed. Surely nothing could survive that. The machine gun kept firing. Jorek watched through his scope, disbelieving. The gunner had taken multiple hits. His position was ablaze. But his hands stayed on the weapon, his body propped against the rubble, refusing to fall until his ammunition ran dry. Warlord Shektaris slammed his fist on the table. "Unacceptable. We have superior numbers, superior technology, superior everything. With respect, Warlord, we don't have superior will." Vrakthi's pulled up footage from Kansas City. The council watched in silence as Pierce dragged herself forward, blood trail behind her, rifle still firing. This is the third engagement where humans have won despite catastrophic casualties. This is not an isolated incident. This is who they are. "Then we break them," another warlord growled. "We destroy their cities, eliminate their infrastructure, force them to submit. We tried that." Vrakthi's displayed orbital bombardment footage. Entire city blocks reduced to ash. They dig shelters, they hide their wounded, and then they emerge and continue fighting. In some cases, the bombardment only made them angrier. The council fell silent. Shektaris leaned forward. "What are you suggesting, Commander?" Vrakthi's met his gaze. "Withdrawal, while we still have forces to extract. Every day we remain, we lose more soldiers to an enemy that, by all rights, shouldn't still exist. They're not following the rules of engagement. They're not behaving rationally, and that makes them the most dangerous adversary we've ever faced. We've conquered 43 systems. None of them were human." Vrakthi's cut him off, a breach of protocol that would normally earn severe punishment. But no one reprimanded him. The other species fought until their bodies failed. Humans fight until the universe physically tears them from existence, and sometimes not even then. The retreat began 3 days later. Jorek stood on the transport ship, watching Earth shrink in the viewport. Around him, surviving soldiers sat in silence, their eyes hollow, their spirits broken. They'd come expecting conquest. They were leaving with nightmares. A young soldier named Praxis approached Jorek. "Captain, may I ask you something? Speak." Why didn't they quit? Jorek remembered Pierce limping through fire, Reeves taping his wounds, Wang whispering her status report with her last breath. He thought about the machine gunner who died at his post, the medic who kept working with one arm, the soldier who used himself as a bomb. Because they're human, he turned from the viewport. And humans don't know how to quit. It's not in their biology. It's not in their training. It's something deeper, something we can't fight with plasma rifles or orbital strikes. "What is it?" Jorek shook his head. "I don't know. Will, maybe. Or stubbornness. Or maybe they're just too angry to die. Whatever it is, it makes them unkillable in the ways that matter." The word spread through the fleet, then through the Dominion, then across the galaxy. Species that had never heard of Earth suddenly learned the name. They heard stories of the humans who fought with broken bones, the soldiers who crawled from fires, the warriors who refused to lie still in their graves. Some species scoffed, others investigated. A few brave fools planned their own invasions, certain they would succeed where the Soltari had failed. Most simply added Earth to the list of worlds to avoid. Because once you've seen a human refuse to die, once you've watched them drag themselves forward when their body screams for rest, once you've witnessed them smile through blood and laugh at impossible odds, you understand a fundamental truth. Humans aren't the strongest species. They're not the fastest or the toughest, but they are, without question, the most terrifyingly persistent. And that persistence, that absolute refusal to accept defeat, makes them something far more dangerous than any weapon. It makes them unstoppable. Years later, in a Soltari military academy, instructors taught new recruits about the failed Earth campaign. They showed the footage, presented the data, analyzed the tactical failures. But the final lesson was always the same. An old veteran, scarred and grey, stood before the cadets. He'd served in the invasion. He'd been there. Remember this, he told them. When you face an enemy who knows they can lose, you can win through superior force. When you face an enemy who suspects they might lose, you can win through intimidation. But when you face an enemy who refuses to believe they can lose, who fights like they're already dead and just forgot to fall down. He paused, letting the words sink in. Then, young soldiers, you pack your equipment and you leave. Because you're not fighting warriors anymore. You're fighting a force of nature. And nature, unlike soldiers, doesn't accept surrender. The lesson ended. The cadets filed out, whispering among themselves about the humans and their impossible endurance. In the halls of power, in the fleet commands, in the quiet corners where veterans gathered to share their stories, one phrase became common wisdom among the Soltari. It spread to their allies, their trade partners, their distant neighbors. A warning passed from species to species. Never fight humans on their own ground. Never believe they're beaten until they've stopped breathing. The Soltari learned what every species eventually learns when they face humanity. You don't need to be invincible to be unstoppable. You just need to be too stubborn to know the difference. On Earth, in the ruins of Kansas City, someone erected a monument. Simple stone, no fancy words. The dead who refused to stay down. The wounded who kept fighting. The ordinary people who did extraordinary things, simply because surrender wasn't in their vocabulary. 8 years later, Major Jorek was still trying to forget Earth. The nightmares persisted anyway. On most nights, he woke to visions of Captain Lauren Pierce dragging herself through fire, to the sound of that machine gunner's weapon still firing from a position that should have been ash. His therapist said it would fade with time. His therapist was wrong. So when the alert came through official channels, Terran vessel detected in neutral zone 7, requesting parley. Jorek's first instinct was to request a transfer to the furthest mining outpost in Dominion space. Instead, his commanding officer summoned him to the briefing room aboard the Sovereign Dawn. Commander Vrakthais stood at the holographic display, older now, his carapace dulled by the weight of his failures. Around him sat the delegation, diplomats in their formal robes, military advisors, xenopsychologists who'd spent the last 8 years studying humanity from a very safe distance. Major Jorek, you're going to meet them. Sir, Jorek felt his throat constrict. You survived multiple engagements. You've seen them at their worst. That makes you valuable. Vrakthais manipulated the display, bringing up the profile of a ship. Sleek lines, efficient design, bristling with weapons that looked deliberately visible. A warning. This is the Liberty. It jumped into the neutral zone 6 hours ago and broadcast a message in 17 languages, including ours. They want to talk. About what? That's what we're going to find out. You'll accompany the diplomatic team. If they attack. With respect, sir, if they wanted to attack, we'd already be dead. Jorek studied the ship's profile. That's a warship pretending to be a diplomatic vessel, or a diplomatic vessel that refuses to be an easy target. Either way, they're making a statement. One of the diplomats, a female named Treshka, cleared her throat. Our xenopsychologists believe the humans are testing us, seeing if we're capable of civil discourse after the invasion attempt. And if we fail the test, no one answered. They didn't need to. The meeting was set for the following day, aboard the Sovereign Dawn. Neutral ground, both sides agreed, though Jorek suspected the humans didn't believe in neutral ground. They just believed in acceptable risk. The Terran delegation arrived exactly on time. No early posturing, no late power plays. Just punctual professionalism that somehow felt more threatening than any display of force. There were 3 of them. The first through the airlock was a woman in her late 30s, dark hair pulled back in a severe bun, wearing a uniform that managed to look both diplomatic and tactical. Her nameplate read Ambassador Torres. She moved like someone who'd seen combat but had traded the rifle for the negotiating table. The transition hadn't softened her eyes. The second was a man who had to duck through the doorway, built like he could bend steel with his bare hands. Major Daniel Pierce. The surname hit Jorek like a plasma bolt. The family resemblance was there in the jawline, the set of the shoulders, the way he catalogued every exit point within the first 3 seconds. The third was younger, maybe mid-20s, with the careful tension of someone trying very hard to appear calm. Dr. Ashley Reeves. She carried a data pad and wore civilian clothes, but her eyes had the same quality Jorek had seen in Kansas City. She was afraid, but she was here anyway. Commander Vrachthies. Ambassador Torres extended her hand, palm open, a human gesture of peace that required complete vulnerability. Thank you for agreeing to meet. Vrachthies hesitated, then clasped her hand briefly. The touch seemed to pain him. Ambassador, please sit. They arranged themselves around the conference table, Torres in the center, flanked by her team. Vrachthies led the Soltari delegation, with Jorek positioned where he could see everyone. The Major's eyes found Jorek immediately, held for a moment, then moved on. Recognition, memory. Let's be direct, Torres began. 8 years ago, your species invaded our world. You killed millions of our people. You destroyed our cities. And then you left. We want to know why. Treshka started to speak, but Vrachthies held up a claw. Because we couldn't win. Because your people fight in ways we don't understand. Because staying would have meant the extinction of our expeditionary forces and possibly our entire military. That's honest. Torres leaned back. Good, we appreciate honest. Now here's our position. We're not interested in revenge. We're interested in making sure it never happens again. You want assurances. Vrachthies' mandibles clicked. Apologies, reparations. No. Major Pierce spoke for the first time, his voice carrying the same weight his sisters had over the radio. We want you to understand what you did. Really understand it. Because right now, your people think you lost to some kind of berserkers. Humans who don't feel pain, who can't be killed, who fight like machines. That's not true, and it's dangerous if you believe it. Dr. Reeves pulled up images on a data pad, projecting them onto the center of the table. Medical scans, psychological profiles, combat footage from the human perspective. This is Corporal Danny Reeves. She pointed to footage of a young man laughing with his squad before a patrol. My brother. He was shot in the chest during the Denver engagement. The pain was excruciating. His body went into shock. He should have passed out. She changed the image. Danny Reeves, pale and shaking, pressing tape to his wound. He stayed conscious through training, muscle memory. The understanding that if he stopped, his squad would die. Not because he couldn't feel pain, because he chose to act despite it. We know this, one of the Soltari advisors said. Your species has remarkable pain tolerance. We don't. Reeves cut him off. We feel everything. Every cut, every burn, every broken bone. We're not built tougher than you. We just have something else. She looked at Jorek. You were there in Denver. Tell them what you saw. Jorek's claws scraped against the table. I saw a soldier, who should have been dead, continue fighting. I saw him stand when standing was impossible. I saw. He stopped, finding the words. I saw someone who was more afraid of failing his team than dying. That's it exactly, Torres nodded. It's not that we don't feel fear or pain, it's that we've learned as a species to put something else first. Our people, our mission, our values. Call it stubbornness, call it will, call it whatever you want. But understand that it costs us. Major Pierce spoke again. My sister, Captain Lauren Pierce, died 3 months after Kansas City. Not from her wounds, she survived those. She died from what holding that position did to her body long term. The infections, the permanent damage, the price of refusing to quit. His jaw tightened. She knew it would kill her eventually. She did it anyway. The room fell silent. Vrachthies studied the humans across the table. They weren't posturing, they weren't threatening, they were teaching. Showing the Soltari something their species had never had to consider. Why are you telling us this? Vrachthies asked. Because we need you to understand we're not monsters, and we're not invincible. Torres gestured to her companions. We're just people who will do terrible things to ourselves if it means protecting what we love. And if you try to invade us again, we will do it again. Millions of us will die. Millions of you will die. And at the end of it, we'll still be standing, and you'll be broken. Not because we want it. Because we can't help it. And you'd rather we knew this before anyone else tried, Jorek said. Smart. Pierce gave him a grim smile. Major Jorek, right? You were the one who pulled back in Denver instead of pursuing. You remember. I remember every Soltari who showed good tactical sense. Pierce tapped his data pad. We tracked individual unit commanders. You saved lives by retreating, yours and ours. We respect that. Dr. Reeves pulled up another file. We've been monitoring your communications. Other species are talking about testing Earth's defenses. The Vrelics, the Montari Coalition. They think you were weak or unlucky or that you didn't try hard enough. We need the galaxy to understand what actually happened, or we're going to be fighting wars for the next century. You want us to be your witnesses, Treshka said. We want you to be truthful. Torres met each set of eyes around the table. Tell your people what you saw. Tell the galaxy. Not as propaganda, not as a threat, as fact. Humans will defend themselves with everything they have, including their own lives. And that makes war with us unwinnable, even if you destroy our worlds. Vrakthies was quiet for a long moment. Then he pulled up his own files. I've been documenting everything since the retreat. Battle reports, casualty figures, testimonies from survivors. I was planning to bury it. Letting the Dominion forget seemed easier than remembering. Nothing about this is easy, Torres said, but it's necessary. What do you want from us? Vrakthies asked. Specifically, a joint statement. Soltari and human governments released together. The facts of the invasion, the casualties on both sides, and a mutual agreement. Earth is under human protection, and any species that attacks us attacks at their own peril. In exchange, we pledge non-aggression. We won't come looking for revenge. We won't hunt down your fleets. We go back to our world and you go back to yours. And if other species don't listen, Major Pierce's smile held no warmth. Then they'll learn the same lesson you did. But at least you'll have warned them. That's all anyone can ask. The negotiations took 6 hours. Treaties were drafted, statements prepared, verification protocols established. Through it all, Jorek watched the humans work. They were efficient, professional, collaborative. Nothing like the bleeding warriors from his nightmares. And somehow that made them more frightening, because it meant those warriors were still inside them, waiting, controlled, leashed by choice rather than capability. As the Terran delegation prepared to leave, Jorek found himself standing beside Dr. Reeves in the corridor. Your brother, he said quietly. Is he? He survived. He's teaching high school history now. She smiled, fragile and real. He still has nightmares. I have nightmares too, Jorek admitted. About your people. About the things you did to yourselves just to win. Good. Reeves looked at him steadily. Hold on to those nightmares, Major. Remember what you saw, because the next species that forgets, or the one after that, or the one after that, they'll need someone who remembers to stop them before it starts. That's a heavy burden. Yeah, she turned to follow her delegation. But someone has to carry it. Might as well be the ones who were there. The Liberty departed the neutral zone 3 hours later. Jorek stood in the observation deck, watching it jump to FTL, leaving only the brief distortion of folded space. Vrakthies joined him at the viewport. They're right, you know. About everything, we have to tell the galaxy what happened, all of it. The High Command won't like it. The High Command can adapt or be replaced. Vrakthies' voice carried a hardness Jorek had never heard before. I'm tired of the Dominion learning through bloodshed. If we can teach this lesson with words instead of corpses, we take that option. And if the galaxy doesn't listen? Vrakthies thought about Private Wung, whispering her status report with the last of her breath. About Staff Sergeant Briggs treating wounded with one arm. About Captain Pierce limping through fire because surrender wasn't a word in her vocabulary. Then the galaxy bleeds, he said. But at least we tried to stop it. The joint statement was released simultaneously across every major communication network in known space. It was detailed. It was honest. It was terrifying. The footage alone, Soltari combat recordings showing exactly what human persistence looked like, sent shockwaves through military commands across dozens of worlds. Some species scoffed. Some investigated. Some planned invasions anyway, certain they would succeed where the Soltari had failed. Most simply added Earth to their star charts with a new designation, protected by natural deterrent. Extreme caution advised. In the years that followed, a few species tested humanity's defenses. They learned. Always they learned. And always there was a Soltari officer somewhere, a veteran of the failed invasion, who said the same thing to their allies. I tried to tell you. We all did. But you had to see for yourselves. Because humanity didn't conquer the galaxy with weapons or fleets, they conquered it with reputation, with the understanding that some species, when pushed, will push back until the universe itself breaks. And sometimes, that's enough to keep the peace. Jorek retired from active service 2 years after the diplomatic meeting. He took a position at the military academy, teaching tactics and strategic studies. On the first day of every term, he showed his cadets the footage from Denver, from Kansas City, from 100 other engagements. This is what happens, he told them, when you fight a species that values something more than their own survival. Learn from it, respect it, and pray you never have to face it yourselves. The lesson always ended the same way, with silence, with understanding, with the knowledge that humanity had won their war not by being the strongest, but by being the most willing to pay the price. And that price, that terrible, beautiful, unstoppable human will, had purchased something more valuable than victory. It had purchased peace. In Kansas City, beside the simple stone monument, someone added a second marker. Different words this time, carved in both English and Soltari script. They came for war, we gave them truth, and truth in the end was stronger than either.